So I'm going to start with arithmetic. You can see that arithmetic, we remember, is adding or subtracting over and over again. The only thing that's different is now we're dealing with the first term, because it matters what the first term is. That's the A1 part of this equation. So now when you're writing the equation, you're going to be filling in A1. The other thing you're going to be filling in is D, common difference, which we did last class. So this D right here. And only at some point, like if they were to ask you for the 100th term, that's what you would plug in for N. So when they're talking about N, it's your term number that you're looking at. So I'm going to give you an example right below. So here's an example. Let's use So now we're going to write the explicit version of that. So I'm looking and it says explicit even on your formula sheet. I know it's a to the n equals A1 means your first term, or when x equals 1. What is your first term here? 5. So now we need that in the equation. So instead of A1, I'm writing what the first term is. Plus n minus 1, because it's just asking me to write the equation. And then your D. What is our difference, common difference here? 5. So I know since my common difference is 5, I'm going to put that right there. That's the equation, right? The reason we use this is because if I'm looking for the 20th term or even the 5th term, all you have to do is plug that in for n. So if I'm looking for the 20th term, right? All you're doing is plugging in 20 for n. So when I write this again, I'm going to write it out, but instead of n, what should I plug in for n? 20, if they're asking for the 20th term. You put that right into your calculator. So in your calculator, do 5 plus, and you can even do it in your head, 19 times 5. What do you end up getting when you do that? 95? Perfect. That means your 5th term, or we can even write it like this. So to find your 20th term, not this. A to the 20th, that means your 20th term is 95. That way you don't have to sit there and write a table 20 times. This just gives you the answer. Does that make sense? What if I wanted, let's do one more. What if I wanted the 100th term? What would I plug in for n? 100. So I'm going to write the same equation, but instead of that 20, I'm going to put 100. I want to know what the 100th term is. What do you end up getting? What do you end up getting? What do you get? 500. All you're doing is typing that right into your calculator. So instead of making a table 100 times or adding 5 100 times, this is like a little function that does it for you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're right. It is 100. You're right. So this right here was 95, plus the extra 5 was 100. Cool. So let's try a few of those. I'll actually will separate it. So go to that first page in that packet that you had last class. So it looks like this. Notice they're the same sequences, and you already have most of this stuff. So you're going to the first page of the packet you did last class. You already have the common difference. What is the common difference here? 10. What is A1? What is my first term? 27. So I'm doing the first one with you. It's just the very first page of that, right there. It's just your very first page of your packet. Then I'm writing the explicit formula. So I know the explicit formula is the one we just went over. You don't need to write the whole formula down. This is the formula. So I need to figure out, okay, what is my A1? What did we say our first term was? 27. So I'm going to put 27 right here. And what was my D? 10. So that's your equation. That's your explicit formula. All I did was plug in my A1 and my D. Then it says find the 200th term. I'm not going to sit there and do a table for 200 times. So all you have to do is plug the 200 in for n. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, but instead of n, I'm going to put 200. Make sure in the other class the biggest mistake is they forget about this plus sign and they get the wrong answer. Make sure you remember that plus sign. So 200 minus 1 times 10. And you put that right into your calculator. Looks exactly like that. What do you end up getting when you do that? 2017.
2017.
And so that's your answer. That's your 200th term. Does that make sense? Okay. So I want you to try the next 3 on your own for stamps, and then we'll go on to geometric. So I'll give you around 4 minutes to try the next 3 on your own. And then we're going to go on to geometric. So here's our geometric right here. And so it looks something like this. A1 is your first term, right? It's still the same things like that. So now we're dealing with first term. What's your common ratio? Or R, what's being multiplied over and over again. And now term number is, see how n is up in the exponent? That's how you write geometric for explicit. So it's almost like you know it's exponential because you can see an x in the exponent, or an n in this case. So let's do an example together. So I'm going to do 1, 3, 9, 27. Actually, I'm going to use 4, 12, 36. So, first of all, what is my first term here? 4. So, make sure you're writing these notes down. My A1 is 4. What is your R? What are we multiplying by? 3. So now we just write our equation. So the original one is A to the n equals A1 times R to the n minus 1. So all I'm filling in is the n, or the A1 and the R. So we said our first term was 4, so I'm going to put 4 right there. What was your second, or what was your R? 3. That's the equation. Now, if I want to find my 7th term, and these numbers are going to be getting really, really large. That's because you're multiplying over and over again, or they might be getting really, really small decimals because you're multiplying by a fraction. But just know when you do this, when you get a huge number, you're not wrong. It's just that's how it turns out in geometric. So if I want my 7th term, what am I plugging in for n? 7, right? So I'm going to take this equation, and I'm going to plug in 7 for n. You literally just put that right into your calculator. So you do 4 parentheses 3, and you can even just do, what is 7 minus 1? 6. When I do that, I end up getting 2916. Did everyone get that same answer? And so that's just my 7th term. So instead of multiplying over and over again, I can just plug it in that formula. Does that make sense? Okay, so go to the next page of your sheet, and I am changing the term numbers just because they're a little too big for what I did. So go to this sheet right here, and I'm changing the term number. So make sure you're paying attention. So you're crossing out 70 and putting, I want the 17th term for this one. Cross out 40, and I want the 10th term. For 7, I want you to cross out 60, and I want the 13th term. And for 28, cross that out and put 15. So make sure you're crossing those out or you are going to get the wrong answers. So the last two should be 15th and 13th term. The first two should be 17th and 10th. Cool. So I'll do the first one with you. So first of all, what is the common ratio for this one right here? 2. So right here, I'm going to put R equals 2. What is my first term? 4, right? Then I'm going to write my equation. So remember, it's not the same one as last time. Now it looks like this. A to the n equals A1 times R, and I should just use parentheses, to the n minus 1. All I'm plugging in is my A1 and my R. So what is your A1? 4. So A to the n equals 4. What's your R? 2 to the n minus 1. And remember, we give you those formulas, but we're not going to say, hey, Damon, it's time to use this explicit formula right here. You're going to need to look at a formula sheet and go, oh yeah, it says explicit, I need to use that formula. 17th term, if it's looking for the 17th term, all you do is you rewrite the equation, but instead of n, what are you going to plug in? Yeah. What do you get when you put that into your calculator? I did it very quickly. Yep, you're right. So this is 262. Good job. 144. Did everyone get that when they plugged it into their calculator? This is your last lesson too. So like after today, we just review and then it's your test. So you want to make sure you're paying attention. If you guys show me that you're putting in like 100% effort today, we'll move the test back to Thursday instead of tomorrow. But you've got to show us like you're giving full effort and you're doing the delta math. And if we need the extra day of practice, I'll decide at the end of class and I'll push it to Thursday instead of tomorrow. Sound good? Okay, so I want to lag behind you. So I'm going to start doing that. So what you're going to do I see it's arithmetic because it's subtracting by 8. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to write, okay, I know it's arithmetic, so I'm going to use the first formula, which is A1, my A16 plus N minus 1, and my D you guys said was negative 8. So all you're doing is writing the equation for the first one. The second one is all arithmetic. So you know you're using the same equation. So arithmetic just means you're using that first one we did. So they're telling you what term number they want you to find. The third one is all geometric, and you're finding like whatever term number they want you to find. Does that make sense? The last two are probably the easiest. The first one is probably the hardest. So maybe do that last because you have to differentiate. Any questions about any of those three? No, yes, maybe. Okay, so once you got your stamps, and I'll come around and stamp in a second, your ticket out the door is the bottom. And so they're asking, is it arithmetic or geometric for each one? Write the explicit equation. And this one's asking what the 14th term would be. This one, the 25th term. So when there's 5 minutes left in class, I'll just make sure everyone's doing it. And I'll move